Today we're talking Tory tax wars, which seem to have started again over the Prime Minister's proposal, we think, to raise national insurance to pay for improvements, alleged improvements to social care. And I'm joined by my Reaction colleague Tim Montgomerie. I'm Iain Martin, editor of Reaction. If you're not a subscriber to Reaction, just hit the subscribe button below this video. Tim, it feels as though politics as normal is back actually after a long period, doesn't it? Everything's come roaring back at Westminster.
Mm.
And it's a new version of a row that we're both very familiar with about tax cutting. Where's this come from? Why now?
Very good question. And we're recording in on Monday. Lots of this has been extensively briefed to the newspapers, but we are, of course, commenting on something that hasn't been formally announced. So we should be cautious. But I think a few things are coming together. One, I think there's the new energy of the health secretary wanting to make his mark in a brief. Sajid Javid has been sort of reshuffled through a number of briefs in his time and sort of always been left the department before he could really leave his mark.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of him wanting to do that on the social care brief. And of course, this is something the Prime Minister, more importantly, has promised to solve for a long time. And a criticism we've made in these little videos of him is that he's not willing to take tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is an example where he's trying to do exactly that. And to do so at the stage of a parliament where you can still enact things, begin to deliver some of the benefits potentially of that reform before you actually have to go to the country for an electoral test. So those would be my big picture observations before we get into the very important detail of what actually is being proposed.
So the thing that puzzles me about this, well, many things puzzle me about this, but is the first thing is, why national insurance, do you think? I mean, I've heard a lot of, I like lower taxes, but I've heard perfectly coherent explanations of why there needs to be some extra spending on social care. So we both understand that the system is feeling the strain, and all of the demographics suggest that that's only going to increase as a problem. But why national insurance and why not income tax? No one can tell me why.
This is the favoured sort of big stealth tax of all of the seeming chancellors. You will know as well as I do, Iain, this was one that Gordon Brown and Tony Blair chose when they wanted to increase funding for the National Health Service during the early years of New Labour. And I think this is the one that I think chancellors and politicians think that they can get away with as being less impactful politically than other tax rises. I'm not sure that's true anymore. I think the lecturers catch up with the tricks of politicians. I think for Sajid Javid, if he is going down this route, it's a particularly tricky path for him to tread, because one of the successful fights he had during his brief time as Chancellor was to get the Prime Minister to reverse away from his pledge whereby raising income tax thresholds, if you remember, was going to be his initial priority. And actually, Sajid Javid argued, I thought persuasively, that keeping national insurance rates down was the best way of actually communicating the new conservatism that was interested in hardworking, lower paid families. And that is, for me, if the government is going to propose higher NICs, it's really is the ethical implications of this. Yes, we have a levelling up agenda across the country, north versus south, but I think we have a big levelling up challenge across the generations in this country as well. I think the package of measures, when it's announced, if it includes abandonment or at least dilution of the triple lock on pensions, would potentially make it more equitable. But whatever happens, I think the government's going to run into some tough water, because it's going to potentially be upsetting pensioners and earners at the same time.
Yeah, this is the difficulty, isn't it? Because it's a tax rise which falls heavily on the lower paid and younger Britons, with, as you say, the hope that this is what the government will be hoping, is that it's all it's so far, it's so early in those taxpayers' working lives that they just sort of sigh and move on and accept it, and over the course of their working lives they just eventually forget about the tax increase. But I, like you, I think partly because of what's happened with the pandemic and the way in which the demographics of the labour market are playing out at the moment, with the young having quite a bit of clout in labour market terms because of labour shortages, for example. I think people are just very attuned to this potential ethical problem, and it will play in in big mainstream forums like the Jeremy Vine show, which of course was discussing precisely this, with listeners from different generations clashing on air, with older Britons saying, well, we paid our national insurance. As usual, most people misunderstand how national insurance works, and so we've paid for this. If more is needed, the young just have to get on with it. We had it tough when we were younger, and so on and so on. And younger Britons saying, well, look, why on earth should they pay this extra tax burden to help people who already own houses? And this is youngsters who can't get on the housing ladder. I just think it is very dangerous for the government, because it also does that thing which no government should really want, even one with an 80-seat majority, is it potentially unites the opposition, as in the Labour Party, and Tory rebels. And you wouldn't need that many to ensure that the government couldn't get this through. But as you said, Tim, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this in the next few days, we still haven't seen the whole package of measures. We haven't seen the tax proposals specifically, and the cabinet's got to discuss all of that theoretically. But we also haven't seen the proposals.
That's a really important dimension, Ian, you mentioned. Actually, it does seem to be a policy emerged between the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, and the Health Secretary without any. I know this is a theme that you keep returning to quite rightly. Is just we don't have cabinet government. And we have cabinet government in our history for a reason. It produces, proper buy-in by a political party, by a government. It ensures that measures that need to be subject to scrutiny are subject to scrutiny internally before they're subject to scrutiny externally. Yeah. And the failure to buy in so far, at least from the cabinet, is one of the worrying dimensions so far of this putative policy.
Do you think there's a danger that the Prime Minister could actually lose this, even just this week, that he might have to U-turn?
Anything is possible in politics these days, and so I hesitate to say no. I think this will be such a flagship government policy initiative that I think it will be difficult for the government to lose this vote in Parliament. But that, I think there's every possibility they will lose this in the court of public opinion. I think if you've got because the other one dimension that we haven't discussed so far is, of course, there was an absolutely explicit pledge in the Tory manifesto not to do this. And what isn't clear to me yet is there's one thing is to break an explicit pledge to fund something to do with the pandemic. One of the first videos you and I recorded, Ian, in this series was, talking about which of the post-lockdown, post-pandemic, backlog, whether it was education or health, was most serious. There's one thing to raise taxes in contravention of your manifesto to fund all of that. But this seems largely to be a broken pledge to fund something we've known for a long time we had to face up to, which is the social care bill. And I think that might be more difficult for the Conservatives. And if, of course, they're going to break the triple lock as well, which for those who aren't familiar is the commitment to pensioners to raise the pension by earnings, inflation, or I think, is it 3%? No, 1.5%, isn't it? Anyway, whatever it is. If they break that pledge as well, you're really into territory whereby at the next general election, who's going to believe any word that is in the Tory manifesto?
Is that calculation as simple as, well, this helps older voters, and older voters are obviously, more likely to vote Conservative. Voters tend to become more conservative as they get older. That there's just a brutal calculation made by the Prime Minister that disproportionately, well, older voters have more clout, therefore it ultimately won't matter.
I think that's absolutely right. And you can begin to conclude, what does the Conservative Party believe in anymore? Does it believe in low taxes? Doesn't seem to. Does it believe in small government? Doesn't seem to. Is it a party of free markets? Is it a party of law and order? Is it a party of immigration? Hard to say. Is it a party of old people and supporting older people's interests? Well, it seems to tick that box every single time, whether it comes to the housing market or the distribution of public spending. And I'm not sure that's really where the Conservative Party, at a fundamental moral point of view, should be ending up. But that seems to be decisions like this where it's heading.
Yeah, the difficulty is that, and Rob Colville, from the director of the Centre for Policy Studies, made this point earlier, which is that this national insurance rise, this is essentially, it's a tax on jobs. That's what Conservatives would be calling it if it was the Labour Party doing it. Now, why does that really matter beyond just the ethical and moral implications? It matters in terms of growth. And if there is a way out of Britain's difficulties post the pandemic and some of the challenges and opportunities it has with Brexit, surely the answer is growth. And the government should be doing absolutely everything it can to accentuate and encourage growth and economic dynamism. And with one of its first major forays in this area post pandemic, it is introducing a tax on jobs. Listen, Tim, thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about this when the precise proposals are out on how the scheme is going to work, how the tax changes will work. And I have a funny feeling I'm at Westminster all day or most of tomorrow, and it feels as though normal politics is back, and there's going to be a lot to talk about in the next few days. So if you are not a subscriber to Reaction and you want to see more of these videos, just click subscribe below, and don't forget to like our video. Until next time, thank you for watching.